Hi, good evening everybody, and thank you very much for your patience. Sorry for the delay. We have had a few technical issues that we had to fix before, but now we are ready to go. Thank you very much for joining this session, this meetup session about Azure Cloud Computing. So we are going to review some first steps within Azure, and what we can see currently is the interface of Azure Cloud Services. I'm going to see if I can join from a different profile and get things started with that. Or done. Okay. So if you want to get started with Azure, you can browse to azure.com, and that will land you to the Azure website from Microsoft, in which you are going to have some details about what is Azure and what are the different resources that are available. You can start from a free account, which will give you 12 months access to popular free cloud services, including artificial intelligence, compute resources, storage, network, and database. You will have a $200 credit account for 30 days that you can use to try things. And that's what we will try to leverage as well. So $200 for 30 days for the first month, during which you can create any resource you want, as long as it corresponds within the limit of $200. And otherwise you will have access to more than 25 other services that are always free. So that can be quite useful. So let's see, once you have created this account, so you need of course a credit card that will give you that will help you grant access to those services. Okay, so they just need a validation way for you to access those free services with a credit card and a certain email address. So, okay, I'm going to connect with an account. Let's see. Okay. So once you are logged into Azure, you have access to different resources that you can set up. You have access to virtual machines. You have access to different type of databases, SQL, but also MySQL, PostgreSQL, and other type of databases. The central resource in Azure is Azure Active Directory that manages users and application, and how users can connect to different applications. And also we have management of devices, subscriptions, subscription, and disk as well, that are used actually for virtual machines. So we have different categories available for Azure. Computing, in which we will have virtual machine and other compute resources. We will have networking to connect different applications together and create a network in which we can safely work. Storage, so Azure Data Lake, generation 1, generation 2. We have classic storage accounts and other type of storage that are available. Web resources, so if you want to create a website, for example, you could go inside web resources. And we have mobile resources, containers for Kubernetes and other type of containers. Databases, so as we have mentioned before, so the possibility to create SQL databases, but also Azure Cosmos DB, MySQL database, PostgreSQL as well. Here we okay, PostgreSQL we have. Otherwise, MariaDB as well. I don't see MySQL, but it's available as well. It's possible to create MySQL database. So different type of databases available to create inside Azure, and Azure Synapse is the new name for Azure Data Warehouse. So Data Warehouse is now Azure Synapse in Azure. Analytics as well, so well, Power BI embedded. We have HD inside clusters, Azure Databricks, Azure Data Factory, so to transform data and connect different data sources and data destination, and use Data Factory to create pipelines and transfer data from one source to another, eventually do transformation in the cloud and prepare the data in the cloud. Data lake analytics that can be used for data lakes, create analytic on top of those data lakes. And on top of Azure Synapse, we can use Azure Synapse Analytics to create some analytics on top of that. So 1 minute, I'm going to try and fix something quickly. Okay, we can see on the left side different type of categories in which we will find the resources that we need. So from all the resources, if we start from all, then we have, okay, compute, networking, storage, web, mobile, containers, databases, analytics, blockchain resources, AI, machine learning, Internet of Things, mixed realities, integration, identities, security as well. So to manage the security of the resources. We need to it's not there. Okay. We have DevOps resources, different tools for migrating data and getting those data in the cloud. So from on-premises data to cloud resources. We have tools to monitor activities as well, so different type of tools to monitor activities in the cloud, as well to manage and handle governance in the cloud. So management and governance, those tools are specific for management and governance. Intune is for device management mainly, so enterprise devices and management of those devices. So from within the portal, so we have the possibility to navigate between all those resources and create a resource. And on the left, from the upper left corner, we can access also those favorite resources. So we can also pin those resources to easily access those resources, the most common one that we want. And if we want to remove them, we can click on the three dots just beside. I wanted to, yeah, we can, okay, when it displays the contextual menu, we can unclick the star to remove that favorite. Otherwise, we can also add a favorite if we want from all services. So if I choose management group, for instance, I can eventually pin blade to dashboard, so add it to my dashboard. So a dashboard, we can have a look at what is a dashboard. We can have the dashboard here in which we can create different tiles that we can customize the dashboard, so with different tiles that represent the different activities that we want, the different resources that we have created, or access to the most common resources. We can have some analytics tiles as well, so we can edit that dashboard and add different type of resources as we need within that dashboard, either resources that we want to monitor, resources that we want to access, resources that we have created, or analytics about those resources, or monitoring tools. As we have seen, we have different type of monitoring tools that we can add. We have, for instance, metrics add, metrics chart that we can add if we want to monitor a database or a virtual desktop. We can do that from here. So yeah, so we can add different things, then we can save it, and now we can edit that resource and see what we want to monitor. So from here we can select different subscription that we want to monitor. So I'm not going to do that right now, but we can customize that dashboard, so with different tiles, have different metrics that we want to see, so either for the virtual machine, the data storage as well, the quantity of data that we have in our storage, how much compute power does it use, the RAM, virtual CPU, and other type of metrics that we can monitor. And once we are done, so we can save that dashboard and create eventually multiple dashboard as well, create a new dashboard that display different things. So Azure is organized in subscriptions. So at the very beginning, when you create your first account, you will need to create a subscription. You can create multiple subscriptions, and within one subscription, you will need to create a resource group. So it will always start with a resource group. We can see here I have multiple different resource groups that contain different type of Azure resource. We have a location that we need to choose for each of those resources, and we can see the subscription to which those resource group belong to. We can see that I have different subscription, and those resource group belong to different subscriptions. So we can start always by creating a new resource group. This doesn't cost anything. A resource group acts like a container or a folder in which we are going to place different resources. So we can choose the subscription to which we are going to attach that resource group. We give it a name, so whatever name we want. We need just to respect some definition for that name. So we can name it training resource group RG. and we can choose the location in which our resource will belong to. So this is absolutely independent from all the other resources that we are going to create within that resource group. We can choose a certain region for that resource group and have different resources from different regions within that resource groups. So let's choose, for me, I'm going to choose well, Europe, West Europe. It doesn't matter for now. We can proceed to the next. Eventually, we can give it some tag names if we want, so we could categorize it. So purpose, meetup, and I validate that. So then it goes to the next stage. For each resource, we have different stages. Some basic information. Some resources will have more stages, and then when we reach the last one, it always goes to review and create. And when it passes the validation, we can see the message in green on top, and then we can create that resource. So the most simplest one and the most important one will be the resource group. So it's always a necessary step. Once we have created one, we can see that it appears here, resource group. It's empty, and we can create more resources inside. So from that resource group, we can create resources. So we have access again to the entire menu of all the resources that are available. And within that, we can choose what we are going to create. So let's say we want to create a database within that resource group. So we can choose what type of database we are going to create. I want to create a PostgreSQL database. So I can create within a single server, a flexible server, or hyperscale or Azure Arc enabled. So you can see that some of them are currently in preview. So this one is in preview. If it is in preview, well, you wouldn't like to use it for production purpose. Eventually for testing, for development, but not for production. So let's do, and actually I cannot even create it. I see that I don't have the button to create it. So I wouldn't be able to create one. Let's do with a single server. We can choose to click on that. So once we create our resource, again, we are going to go through different phases. We need to choose what subscription it's going to be attached to. Within that subscription, always which resource group it's going to be added to. So from that blade, we can choose actually one of those resource group, or eventually we can create a new one. Okay, so well, that's the, well, because I started from the resource group I created, automatically it references that resource group, the training RG that I just created before. Then we need to create a new server or give our server a name. So let's call it training underscore. It doesn't accept underscore. Well, it has to be lowercase actually. Okay, so training SBR. Okay, for server. So the name has to be unique and it has to be validated. Then do I need some backup? No, not especially. Sorry, if the data source where there is none currently. Again, independently from the resource group region, I can choose a specific location in this one. So I'm going to choose South Africa North, the closest one from my location, but currently the service is not available for this location, for this subscription. Okay, so I'm going to remove it and choose Europe, West Europe, and it works. That's fine. Which version? Well, I will choose the most recent one. I can choose what's the compute and storage power that I want to attribute to that very database, or that server rather. So I can configure my server. I can choose the virtual cores that I'm going to affect to that server. So I can decrease it to the minimum to 2 virtual core, mainly because it is a demo, so I don't need especially a lot. And if I am at the very beginning of my database and I don't have very much data or very little traffic, I don't expect much, I'm going to reduce it to the minimum. Okay, so otherwise I can increase it. I can get back anytime I want to it and decrease it as well. I can eventually opt between different categories. So we have the basic, the general purpose, and the memory optimized. For basic, what do we have? We have also the possibility to select up to 2 virtual cores for our server, and the storage capacity as well. So we can increase it or decrease it. We can see that when we are setting up our server, we have actually the price which shows up on the right side. So we can see how much will it cost us at the end of the month. If I opt for a basic with 2 vCore, or even, okay, what about if I choose 1 vCore? Yeah, 1 vCore, it's possible. So let me see. Okay, I don't see so much what we have on the right. Okay. Oops. Okay. So now we can see the cost has decreased. Okay, from 1 vCore, it has gone down to 34 USD a month, and with 2 vCores, it would go to 63 vCore. So those things, we can easily adjust them afterward as well. And increase it after as well. Okay, so that's important. With general vCore, so well, the cost would increase drastically, so to $300. So that would be quite a lot. Now that we want to test that, so we can keep it on the lower side, so 1 vCore should be enough. And storage, well, we don't need that much. We can go for 10 GB in that case, and we can validate that. So now we have chosen our compute and storage capacity for our server. We can give a name for the administrator of that database. So David. Make sure you remember the password to access that. Okay, I made a mistake. Okay, it has passed the validation, so both are correct. We can go to the next step, which yeah, we don't need. For the next steps, okay, additional settings, okay, data encryption. Well, for that case, we don't need it, so I'm going to pass it. And I'm going to go to tags. In that case, we are going to use the same tags as we use for the resource group. So I named it purpose and training. It was okay. That gives you the possibility to organize your resources with specific name tags. So you can create multiple subscriptions in which you will organize your different resources, different resource groups that are acting like folders in which you are going to organize your different resources. And within those, well, for each resource you can also attribute one or more than one tag that can help you organize your resources. So with that created, I can move on to the last phase, which is going to be review and create. We have a summary of what we have chosen. So the compute power the compute and storage power that we chose for the server of our database for PostgreSQL, and the price that's going to cost us for a month, and the different details that we inputted before. Now we can create our resource. For PostgreSQL, we don't have the possibility to have it paused automatically, but we are going to see for a SQL server something which is very interesting. Okay, I don't want that. Let's go back. So currently, so our resource is being deployed. Okay, so we need to wait a little bit. We can see that here it's being deployed, and it might take a few minutes to being deployed correctly. So we can always review what's currently being deployed. Let me go to all services. We can always review what's currently being deployed from the upper side of the window, the toolbar on the top, in which we have the notification icon. And with the notification icon, we can see what has been deployed, what's the status, eventually the credit if you have a credit, so you can see what's remaining within your credit, and also the status of what's being deployed. So while this is being deployed, I can also deploy another resource. And let's deploy another, well, we can create another resource. I'm going to create another resource. A resource group doesn't cost anything, so we can create as many resource groups as we want. So I'm going to create it in this subscription. I will call it training 2RG, and I'm going to create it in Europe, West Europe. Okay. Move on. I'm going to add it to the same tag, purpose and training. Oops, not the right spelling. Okay, so I'm going to give it to the same tag, and I can create that resource group. Okay, we can monitor once in a while the progress of that deployment. We can also click on it and see what's being deployed. So there are different phases. The server is going to be deployed first, and then the database within that server will be made available as well. So otherwise, we can go to our training 2 group, and we are going to create now a SQL server. So we can go to databases, and from within those databases, we are going to choose a SQL database. And for that SQL database, so the resource group that we want is training 2RG. The database name will be training 2DB. The server, so we can choose either an existing server, or I can create a new server. So in that case, I'm going to create a new server, or I could just decide, okay, to create it on one of my server also. So from within that resource, I can also create another resource. So I'm going to create a server, training to SBR, and I cannot do underscore, so I will do an hyphen, which works. Okay, so you always have a validation which shows you if that works or not. It should be unique, and it should contain only letters, numbers, hyphen, and end, start and end with a letter. So now server admin login. So I'm going to use the same as what I used before. Password. I need to confirm that password. And location, I'm gonna try Africa North. Where is it? So let's type it. Ah, it's here. Africa South, Africa North. Okay. Not available. Okay. Okay. Well, we'll choose Europe. Europe what? Okay, Europe, West Europe. Okay, that works. So you can see that when that resource is not available, you have that information that it's not available. So again, I can go back to, where did we have it? I don't remember. Well, we saw the message before that shows us, okay, it's not available. So we can choose a different location. The location is quite important because of the speed at which we can exchange with that resource. Okay. We have Sam who is saying that cannot hear me very well. I'm going to see if we can increase the volume. Okay, apparently on my side it seems to be okay. The volume is good, so it might be more on your side if the volume is not good. I'm going to get closer a bit to the mic and try to speak a bit louder, but on my side, technically speaking, it seems to be all right. Okay, so we can see that we can choose again for that resource a specific location. It might not be exactly the same as the resource group, it can be different. I could choose a UK South, so we can see that it validates as well, and I could eventually choose it in the US, West US too, different from the resource group location. Okay, so the location can be quite important depending on where you are targeting your market. Mainly, okay, for a virtual machine, for example, I would prefer to use Africa, South Africa North, because it goes faster to reach from Uganda, South Africa, than it would be to reach, okay, the US. It would take a bit longer time, and also for database, I would prefer to opt for South Africa or Europe eventually, to have a better response time. So I'm going to change again to West Europe. Okay, so once this is validated, I can click on OK, and now we have our server which is going to be created with that resource as well. Again, I can choose a specific compute and storage option. And something important I wanted to show, we can choose, okay, serverless. We have a bit more option here for a SQL server. So, okay, for the PostgreSQL, we have seen we have 3 different categories for compute and storage. For a SQL server, we have a bit more option. The price is going to be different also because we need a license for SQL Server, and we don't especially need a license for PostgreSQL or MySQL or MariaDB because they are open source. So the price could vary, but something very important that we need to mention for here is that if we opt for serverless, we can enable auto pause. So that can help us really save a lot of money and reduce the cost. Mainly if you use that database infrequently, so once a day or several times during the day and several days a week, you could potentially save a lot of money by enabling auto pause for that server. Well, I'm not so sure if it is dependent on that server or that database in particular. It might be that database in particular. So if you don't use it, you would save a lot. Actually, okay, I can see the NUT one server database are built in vCores based on a combination of CPU and memory utilization. So that database can be paused. Yeah, and actually it says here, the database automatically pauses. So the database is independent from that server. You can have the server and multiple databases on one server, and one database can be auto-paused whenever it's not used after a certain time. Here we can set the time. The minimum is 1 hour, so if after 1 hour it's not being used, it's going to be paused, and when it is paused, it's not billed. So we are not going to be billed for the time it is being paused. So that can be very useful and can help you save a lot of money. So again, we have different categories that we can choose. General purpose, or we can choose eventually between basic, standard and premium, but those one we cannot stop them and we cannot pause them. So they're relatively cheap. You can start with a basic one with a small database, and well, it would cost about $5 per month. A standard one would cost about $15, but those are fixed prices. If we are not using them, we are going to be paying for them, and we cannot stop them and we cannot pause them. So I would rather recommend to use the general purpose and serverless option, because this is billed per second based on vCores used, and that can be paused. So currently the price we can see it's about $5.69 per month, which makes it much cheaper actually than the PostgreSQL database that we created earlier. But it can be even cheaper than that, because we can auto pause it. So currently I have set it up with 1 vCore. Minimum is going to be 0.5 vCore, and I could eventually change it to 2 and 1 vCore. So minimum 1 vCore and max 2 vCore, and I can always change it afterward as well. So the size, let's say, okay, we need about 10 GB for that one. That's it. And we can see that the price has reduced as well. Currently our estimated storage cost per month is going to be 1.78 USD, and the compute cost it is calculated per second. It would be 0.000159 per second. So we can apply that and move on to networking. I want public endpoint, allow Azure resources, and we are going to add our current client IP address. Okay, you might want to set it up differently depending on the security that you want to apply to it or what you are going to do with it. But for a quick access to it, I'm going to allow Azure services and add my current IP address to easily be able to access that resource. And then I can move on to additional settings. With an Azure SQL database, I can add a sample data, which I was not able to do with the PostgreSQL. With the PostgreSQL, I don't have any sample database with that. So with the Azure SQL database, I can add a sample database. Other resources I will not I'm not going to use the trial for now. I will leave it as they are. I can move on to the tag. I can add my tag. So purpose, so I can also select it, and training. Okay. And I can move on to the next step. So again, I have a recap of the different parameters that I set up for that resource and the estimated cost for that month. It is billed by second and it depends on what I will be using. So I'm going to now create that resource. And as that resource is being created, we are going to go back to our PostgreSQL. So we need to wait a little bit that that resource is being created. And as this resource is being created, we can access our resource group. And within our resource group, we have our training server that we created earlier for that PostgreSQL server. So we can see that the logo is different from the other databases. We have the little elephant head that represent the Postgre logo. Within that server, once we have access to that server, we have different settings and properties available for that server. On the first screen, we have an overview of our server, the resource group in which it is, the current status, it's available, the admin username that we set up earlier, the URL address for that server, and the version for the PostgreSQL, as well as a reminder of the performance configuration that we set up, basic 1V core and 9 GB that are available. So we have some graphs that shows us the performance of our server, and now we need to go and have a look at our database within that server. So okay, we have activity logs. So because we didn't connect to it at all, well, we don't have anything, but at least the creation of that resource. Yeah, that was for the deployment of that resource. So we have the different steps that were used to deploy that resource. Access control, tags, so connection strings. So yeah, here we have all the different connection strings that we can use to connect to our server. Let's see if I use dbeaver. So I'm going to use dbeaver to connect to that server and see that we can connect to it correctly. Okay. 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 So let's create a connection to PostgreSQL. what do we need? Okay, we need to download some drivers. Download, okay. So the host for that we have properties. Okay, that's the name of our server, so we can copy that. We can eventually click on the right side here to copy that server name. We can paste it in the host text box. Currently, well, we don't have a specific database inside that we created, so we can leave it like this. Username, the username I created before. So David and my password. And I can test that my connection works correctly. Invalid username specified. Okay, maybe I did a mistake with the username. Okay, username at what did I use? Okay, at training dash svr. Is it test connection? User database Postgre. What did we have? Let's go back to the overview and see. Okay, admin username. We have the server name, which is this one. Let's see, did I use the right one? Let's copy it again. Okay, that's the right one. Here we have our admin username. Okay, and the password. Okay. Let's test again the connection. Okay, let's see. Doesn't use SSH. No. Use SSL. No. Maybe the port. Which port was used? Let's go connection strings. Yeah, 5432. Okay. Server training. Okay. Database. Okay, we don't have a specific database currently. Yeah, the user ID is the right one, password and mode require. Okay, let's see if we have a mode require connection details. Oops. Okay, let's see. No, this didn't work. Proxy, well, we don't have a specific alias, SSL, SSH. Connection details, connection folder, advanced, connection name. Okay. Okay, well, I'm having problem connecting with that. Maybe what? Okay, let's have a look at the Azure SQL database. It has been created. We have it in our resource group too. For Azure SQL database, it works slightly differently. We can see that we have our server separated from our database. In that case, we created a database that contains some sample data, and we can connect to it. So we can click on our training server, and we can see from there that we have access to the different databases that we can have on that server. So it works a little bit differently from the Postgre database that we set up earlier. So in that case, we can see, okay, our database, and for our connection server name, we have it here. Let's do a connection to SQL Server, or Azure. Actually, it should be Azure. Other, we have Azure SQL Server, the host, database. Okay, I'm not so sure of the database name, username, password. We can test our connection. Okay, we need to download some specific drivers for that. Okay, test the connection. Okay, that worked. Okay, so it seems to be a bit simpler to connect to an Azure SQL database than to connect to a PostgreSQL. Okay, I'm not going to take the time to troubleshoot that right now, but at least we have created a SQL database within Azure and created a connection. We can finish that. And now we are going to see our database available with the sample data. It is in the training 2DB. Okay. Okay. And okay, I don't remember if I think I might need to activate something because reference to database and our server name is not supported in this version of SQL. Okay. So let's see, refresh. Okay, we can see that the database is here, but we cannot access it. Tables. Okay. Well, we can access the other tables, but not currently that database. Okay, there are a few issues. Okay, that we need to resolve. Otherwise, we can also query it from within Azure. Okay, we just need to enter the database. So here we have it. Actually, if I take SQL Server Management Studio, maybe it might work better. I'm not so sure. So within Azure and for a SQL Server database and SQL database, we can actually query directly from the browser. So select all from so sales. We have access to IntelliSense as well, so we can select all from product category. And what is it? Okay, run. We can run that query and obtain the results. Okay, so I can do any query I want with that. Okay, let's see. Okay, we change. Okay, so from within Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio, we can easily connect to that database. And can we access all the resources? Yeah, all the tables are here now. Okay. Very good. Actually, okay, I had not used dbeaver before, so maybe the first time you need to activate a few things inside, and that's why it didn't work currently. But we can see that we can access it from SQL Server Management Studio. It works very well. We can also query it in the same way. So select count, just a simple select statement from sales LT. Is it? Let's see. Okay. And customer. I need to choose the right database. That's why, okay, it doesn't show me the IntelliSense correctly. It's not from master. It should be training RG, training 2DB. And now this will work. Okay, and we can execute that. And now we will have our query. So we can access our database from SQL Server Management Studio. It should be the same in dbeaver, but because it's the first time I'm using it, maybe it has not been set up correctly to access those resources, or otherwise it shouldn't be a problem. We can also query that database within Azure from the portal directly and have access to the different tables that are available. We can eventually, okay, choose to create a Power BI report. By clicking on it, it will open a Power BI report connected to that resource, and eventually a Power Apps or Power Automate automation process as well. So we can also change the configuration of our database. So, okay, I can close that. So I have access to the configuration of that database as well, so I can change if I want how it's configured. So if I am planning to do a lot of work on it, I can increase the vCore to, let's say, 6, and minimum should be 1.5 or let's say 2. So I can temporarily change the configuration of that database to fit the purpose that I'm going to do. And again, if I'm not going to use that database for more than an hour, it's going to pause. So again, that's very important because that can help you save a lot of money, and we can always decrease the number of vCores that we want to use. Most probably, if you have an application that you are going to use just during the day, you could increase the vCore and the max vCore and the minimum vCore for a certain period of time for the day, and decrease it during the evening when there is less usage, and eventually pause it completely during the night when nobody is going to use it. Okay, so that's how flexible it can be. And again, you can access the different categories, and once you increase your traffic on your database, you can eventually opt for hyperscale if you have really a lot of traffic on it. So I'm not going to change, I'm not going to apply anything for now, but you can see that you can change those configuration very easily to whatever you need. You have multiple type of properties that you can change as well to fit your need. I'm going to go back to training and create quickly another resource. To create another resource within that resource group, I'm going to click on add, and I want to create a virtual machine. So I can go to compute to create a virtual machine, and I'm going to click on virtual machine. So for that virtual machine, I want to create it within that subscription. The resource group is okay. Virtual machine name, I'm going to call it training VM training VM. Okay, and the location, let's see if I can have it in South Africa. Okay, it seems to work this time, so that's fine. And I can choose the operating system that I want to have on it, either Ubuntu, Red Hat, or server, or eventually a Windows 10 Pro. So a Windows 10 I can create. So the classic Windows 10 operating system, or if I want to have a server, Windows Server, different version 2019, 2016, 2012, and so on. So I'm going to go for Windows 10 Pro. Okay, the size, let's see what's available. We can see that when it's not available, well, we have a warning. And for each size, we have the price that we are going to be billed monthly. If I want to have a different size, I can click on select size and display all the different type of sizes that are available depending on what I want to do. Those that are more specific to a certain compute power, so a virtual core or a virtual CPU or a RAM. So I can eventually choose something that has a 16 gig of RAM or a certain vCPU available on it. Okay, so let's go with what has been selected. So 2 vCPU and 4 RAM will be okay. I'm going to choose that. Username, I'm going to use the same as usual. My password. Okay, oh, it seems wrong. Okay. All right, it seems correct. Okay. Public inbound port. Okay. So when we create a virtual machine, it's important that we select the RDP. So for remote desktop access, remote desktop protocol, so RDP, with the port 3389. If you wanted, we could opt also for HTTP and HTTPS and SSH. Okay, so HTTP and RDP will be fine enough for now. Okay, if you have already an existing license, we can click that for an existing license. Otherwise, okay, we can unclick that. So in that case, it's obligatory apparently. Okay, we can move on. We can choose the type of the disk that we want. Okay. So for instance, if you want a standard HDD, standard SSD or premium. So the price varies also depending on the disk that we have. The disk will be independent from the machine. The disk is a fixed cost and we cannot stop it, we cannot pause it. The disk, well, we can imagine that the cheapest is the standard HDD, otherwise standard SSD is a bit more expensive, and the most expensive of all is the premium SSD. If we wanted to have more information about the prices, we can hover over the exclamation mark, well, or the eye within the circle actually, and click on more, learn more about managed disk types. In which we are going to see what are the prices for those one. So here we have the capacities and their prices. Okay, maybe their prices are not here. So if you wanted to have information about the prices, here we don't have pricing information. Let's see, let's go to Azure calculator. Pricing calculator. Okay, within the pricing, the Azure pricing calculator, we can estimate our cost. So if we go here and we look for premium SSD, okay, we don't have this here. We will need to select virtual machine. So once we have selected our virtual machine, it has been added to our budget. Let me first, okay, my virtual machine is here. Okay, I just have a virtual machine, that's fine. So for that virtual machine, we can see our disk, manage disk is here. And for that manage disk, we can see if we change that to standard SSD, the price changes here. So for a standard HDD with 32 gig or 128, we can see the price changing. And if we look for SSD, we have the price that changes as well. Okay, so it's going to be a bit more expensive with SSD, and premium SSD depends on maybe the region. So we can see that here it's not currently available, but premium disk, where is it? Virtual machine, okay. The premium disk is a bit more expensive, okay. So where do we have? Okay, I don't see it here. So anyway, you can refine your pricing from here. And let's go with a standard SSD, that will be fine enough, and then we can move on. Networking, for that case, okay, we don't especially need one, otherwise we could set it up from here. And then management, Azure Active Directory, no, not especially. Okay, let's move on. Advanced, and let's move on to tags. We can again tag it with our purpose tag, training, and go to create. So now if it passes the validation, then we can create that machine. Otherwise we will have an information what is wrong with the setup of that virtual machine. Okay, it has passed the validation. Now we can create it, and this is going to take a bit time to create. All right, we have reached the end of our session on Microsoft Azure, reviewing the different services that are available, creating a resource. We have seen that within Azure we have different subscription. Well, resources are organized within subscriptions. Within subscription, we need to store our resources within resource groups. Resource groups are created within a certain region. The region that we create the resource group to is independent from the resources or the regions of those resources. And within one resource group, we can create several resources of different types. We can choose to create all the databases within one resource group and all the virtual machine in another resource group, or we could choose eventually to store all our application within one resource group for different management purposes. Okay, so that's it for today. If you have any question, well, you can post them in the comment. Otherwise, you can suggest another topic for the next time, for our next session, to explore a bit further Azure. All right, thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for your time, and I wish you a very nice evening.